Look at these three paintings. What do you think the painter is trying to paint? What shape do you see in the painting? Is it the same shape, or are they all different shapes? If you think they are different shapes, why do you think so? Hi, this is Traveling Ariete, and today we are going to look into the colourful world of David Hockney from his perspective. David Hockney is a British painter who was born in 1937 and an important contributor to the pop art movement of the 1960s. He is considered one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. He moved to LA in 1964, where he discovered his vibrant art style, with LA being obviously sunnier than London. He is most famous for his portraits, printmaking, landscapes, and some of his theatre works. Today we're going to look into some of the paintings on exhibition at the Kunstmuseum Luzern. The exhibition is called David Hockney, Moving Focus. This is a screen I saw in the exhibition. Firstly, look exclusively at its color. Do you notice that it is painted on a three-dimensional canvas? Or do you care more about the pattern that's on it? Now imagine that this is a blank screen. Do you think you would have noticed its three-dimensionality this time? You probably would have. David Hockney shows that our brains are programmed to recognize three-dimensionality through color, shapes, and lines. If certain colors, shapes, and lines are prominent enough, they may actually override the three-dimensionality of the object in our perception of it. Building on this idea, Hockney started experimenting with how drawings can challenge our preconceptions of objects. Take this painting for example. The image spills out of the edges of the canvas and onto the rim. The two chairs are painted on different materials. One is on the canvas while the other one is on glass. Here, Hockney displays two other ways of exploring three-dimensionality, through layering and through the juxtapositioning of different materials. Who says that three-dimensionality has to be expressed through shading? David Hockney's iPad paintings were one of the few parts of the exhibition that could not be recorded, so I tried to recreate the creative process on my own iPad. Shout out to Procreate. This is a photo from my album that I took at the Foundation Weiler in Basel. Essentially, Hockney lays down the big colors on his canvas first. Big, generous chunks of color. Then, he starts adding the details in lines and dots. The peculiarities of the iPad allows him to paint with great speed. I think it is particularly suited to his way of painting, as it allows for maximum efficiency on the screen. Why is he particularly fond of the iPad medium? Well, let's start by exploring why most artists don't opt for the iPad. Firstly, they don't express textures well. Whereas all real-life forms of painting take place on either textured paper or canvas and involves the use of brushes, iPad paintings are constructed using pixels and they don't vary a lot in texture however much you try. Secondly, colors don't blend well. Whereas how well a color blends in real life is subject to conditions such as the dryness of a paint, the color, and the thickness of the paint, iPad knows no such limitations and always blends uniformly. With Hockney's way of painting, these drawbacks are irrelevant. He doesn't blend anyway, and he expresses texture using solely planes, lines, and dots. This could be an extension of his discovery that colors, shapes, and lines play a more important role in shaping how we view objects than actual three-dimensionality. Think back to the screen I just showed you. As such, the iPad painting is an extension to his theory. Did anyone notice that David Hockney is obsessed with water? Some of these paintings are borrowed from the Tate and do not necessarily correspond to the theme of the exhibition, but I believe his exploration of water is simply another manifestation of his interest in dimensions. Water is a material that twists light, thereby twisting perspective. Is water the wrinkles formed by the waves on it, or is it a patch of color contained by a boundary? Does it even have a color? Is it defined by what is reflected on it, or what is in it? Water defies attempts to render it three-dimensional. In fact, it is one of those things that is best rendered in patches of colors, lines, and dots. When one paints water, one needs to throw away all notions of painting a 3D object. You will not find shadows where you expect to find them on an object with a defined shape, nor will you find in water any defined shapes at all, only colors, whose boundaries are constantly shifting. Water is the embodiment of Hockney's theory that perceptions of space are informed by patches of colors, lines, and dots. In other words, Hockney paints 3D objects, like how he paints water. Now, let's return to the three paintings at the beginning. How do you perceive them spatially? Why do you perceive them as different? Now can you tell me what Hockney is trying to do?